Stop. Stop.
Imagine standing in a courtroom, watching a gang leader hear that they'll spend the rest of their life behind bars. Some break down, banging their heads in despair, while others laugh, showing no remorse for the lives they've shattered. It's chilling to see how differently people react when their entire future is taken away. Could you imagine how you'd handle it? Case number 1. Junie Martinez Estrella and the Trinitarios murder case. In June 2018, New York City witnessed a horrific crime that would shake the entire community and make national headlines. It all started on what seemed like a regular summer evening when 15-year-old Leandro Guzman Feliz, affectionately known as Junior, left his apartment to meet a friend in the Bronx. He had no idea that just a few blocks away, members of the notorious Dominican gang Trinitarios were hunting for blood. Junie Martinez Estrella, along with Manuel Rivera, Elvin Garcia, Jose Muniz, and Antonio Santiago, all members of the Trinitarios, were out that night looking for revenge on a rival gang member. The 5 gang members were armed with machetes and large knives, their mission clear: find and kill their target. But they made a deadly mistake. They spotted Leandro, who happened to resemble the rival they were after, and that's when the horror began. Leandro ran into a nearby bodega, desperate for refuge, but the gang followed. CCTV footage captured the terrifying moment Leandro tried to hide behind the counter, begging for safety. Unfortunately, the shop owners didn't offer much help, and the gang members dragged Leandro out onto the street. What happened next is beyond words. In front of horrified onlookers, Estrella and his gangmates brutally stabbed Leandro multiple times with their machetes and knives. The attack was so savage that Leandro, bleeding profusely, staggered back into the bodega, begging for help. Tragically, no one intervened, and he collapsed after attempting to run towards the nearby scene, Barnabas Hospital. He died from a fatal stab wound to his neck, just 1 block away from receiving the help he so desperately needed. The entire city was in shock. The murder was caught on tape, and the senselessness of the attack struck a nerve with the public. People from all over New York rallied in support of Leandro's family, demanding justice for the teenager who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The trial that followed captured the nation's attention, and the evidence against the gang members was undeniable. During the sentencing, however, something even more disturbing happened. Estrella and his accomplices, who had been convicted of first-degree murder, showed no remorse. Instead, they waved gang signs, shouted slogans, and maintained a hardened attitude, as if being sentenced to life without parole meant nothing to them. Estrella, the one who had delivered the fatal blow, seemed completely disconnected from the gravity of his actions. Case number 2, Brandon Spencer's meltdown. During sentencing, in 2012, 19-year-old Brandon Spencer attended a Halloween party on the University of Southern California USC campus, where a simple celebration turned into a nightmare. That night, Spencer, a gang member, opened fire, targeting a rival gang member in retaliation. Unfortunately, 4 people were injured during the shooting. For Spencer, it was meant to be an act of revenge, a show of force in the world of gang violence. But the consequences would be much larger than he anticipated. Fast forward to his trial. In court, Spencer was convicted of attempted murder for the shooting, and during sentencing, he completely lost it. Hearing that he would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars, Spencer banged his head on the table in a fit of frustration and despair. He had to be restrained by officers as his emotions spiraled out of control. For someone who had lived a life of bravado, seeing him break down like that revealed a lot about the weight of a life sentence. Even for a hardened gang member, the reality of 40 years in prison is a sobering thought. In that moment, Spencer's emotional breakdown was a clear sign that he finally understood the full magnitude of his actions. The reality of being confined to a prison cell for decades with no chance of regaining freedom until he was well into his old age hit him hard. As much as he might have portrayed toughness throughout his life, facing the legal consequences of attempted murder showed a much different side of him. A scared, regretful young man who could no longer control his emotions. For many, Spencer's case highlights the often overlooked emotional toll that life sentences can take on gang members. While it's easy to see them as detached or heartless because of the crimes they commit, in court, their reactions can sometimes reveal just how much they struggle to cope with the reality they've created for themselves. In Spencer's case, his public meltdown was a raw, unfiltered reaction to losing his future. Case number 3. Luis Bracamontes. No regrets, only threats. Luis Bracamontes is the kind of criminal whose actions are straight out of a horror story. In 2014, he went on a violent spree that left 2 police officers dead in Northern California. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime either. His actions were cold-blooded and deliberate, showing a complete disregard for human life. On that tragic day, Bracamontes murdered Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Danny Oliver and Placer County Detective Michael Davis Jr. during his rampage, all while attempting to evade capture. But what makes this case even more disturbing is how Bracamonte reacted in court. While most people facing a life sentence might show some remorse, or at least try to present themselves in a better light, Bracamontes did the exact opposite. He laughed. Not only did he laugh, but he even threatened to kill more police officers.
Break up soon, and I will kill more.
Boasting that, if given the chance, he'd go on another rampage. His courtroom behavior was chilling, to say the least. Instead of pleading for mercy or acknowledging his wrongdoing, he mocked the justice system and made it clear that he had no regrets. Imagine being in that courtroom, especially as a family member of one of the slain officers. Seeing Bracamontes smile, laugh, and make such violent threats must have been horrifying. It's one thing to lose a loved one to violence, but to witness the killer gloating about it is a whole other level of torment. The lack of remorse shown by Bracamonte highlighted the dangerous mindset of someone who truly refuses to accept responsibility for their actions. He seemed to embrace his role as a killer, fully aware of the pain he had caused but completely indifferent to it. Case number 4. David Parga's remorseful apology. In 2006, a Halloween party in California turned tragic when David Parga, a small-time gang member, shot and killed 27-year-old Leland Washington. It wasn't a premeditated act, but one driven by a feeling of disrespect. The party, filled with guests from various backgrounds, was a tense atmosphere. Washington, an African-American college graduate, had been asked to leave the gathering, which was mostly attended by Mexican gang members. The decision to return to the party proved fatal when Parga, perceiving Washington's return as an act of disrespect, decided to take matters into his own hands. Without provocation, Parga approached Washington and shot him several times in the torso. At the trial, Parga's guilt was undeniable. He was convicted of second-degree murder, and during the sentencing, something unexpected happened. Unlike many gang members who show no signs of remorse or even double down on their gang loyalty, Parga stood in front of the court and apologized to Washington's family.
I could do it from you guys' son back, brother back, but I am deeply sorry for what happened to him.
He expressed genuine sorrow, admitting that he understood the pain he had caused and wished he could undo his actions. His words were simple but heartfelt, acknowledging that no apology could ever bring Washington back, but he wanted the family to know that he was deeply sorry. What stood out most about Parga's case was the contrast between his reaction and that of many other gang members facing life sentences. Where others might wave gang signs or shout slogans, Parga was a man brought low by his own guilt. He didn't try to defend himself or shift blame. He owned up to what he had done. This kind of remorse is rare in gang-related crimes, where members are often indoctrinated to believe that violence and loyalty to the gang come before anything else, even human life. Parga's apology gave a glimpse of the humanity that sometimes remains beneath the surface in even the most hardened individuals. While it was far too late to undo the damage, his regret was real, and in that moment, the courtroom saw not just a gang member, but a man who realized the weight of his actions. Case number 5. Christopher Dean's gruesome end at the hands of his own gang. Christopher Dean's story is a cautionary tale of what can happen when you try to leave the criminal world behind, especially when you're entangled with dangerous people. Dean was a drug dealer in Atlanta who, by all accounts, wanted to turn his life around. His plan was simple: make one last drug deal, collect the money, and walk away from the criminal life for good. But things took a dark and horrifying turn when his fellow gang members discovered that he had once worked as a police informant. The gang, members of the ruthless gangster disciples, had no intention of letting Dean leave their world, especially after learning of his betrayal. Dean was lured to a house under the pretense of making that final drug deal. What awaited him instead was torture. For more than an hour, Dean was beaten with a crowbar and a 2x4, sodomized, and ultimately executed by his supposed allies. The gang wasn't just interested in punishing him. They wanted to send a message to anyone else who might dare to cross them. Dean's battered body was found stuffed in the trunk of a car, along with the very tools used to end his life.
They were obviously attempting to send a message to fellow gang members and anyone who might dare to testify against them.
When it came time for the gang members to face justice, their reactions in court were as chilling as the crime itself. There was no remorse, no apology, and no acknowledgement of the horror they had inflicted on someone they once considered one of their own. One of the gang members even continued living in the same house where Dean's bloodstains marked the walls, seemingly unfazed by the brutality of their actions. During sentencing, they showed no emotion as they were handed life sentences. The sheer savagery of Dean's murder serves as a grim reminder of how gang loyalty often comes with deadly consequences. There's a certain code of silence within these organizations, and betraying that code can lead to some of the most gruesome forms of violence. Dean, in trying to leave behind a world of crime, was met with the ultimate betrayal by those he once trusted. Case number 6, Victor Rodas, climbing the MS-13 ranks through murder. The MS-13 gang is infamous for its brutality, and the story of Victor Rodas is a prime example of just how violent and cold-hearted their operations can be. In March 2017, Rodas and 4 other MS-13 members carried out a brutal killing as part of a gang initiation ritual. Their victim, 17-year-old Raymond Wood, was abducted, strangled, and stabbed 29 times before his mutilated body was dumped in a forest 2 hours away from his home in Bedford County, Virginia. This murder wasn't driven by personal vendetta or revenge. For Rodas, it was simply a necessary step in proving his loyalty to the gang and earning a higher rank. Wood was targeted not because of who he was or anything he had done, but because Rodas needed to show the gang that he was committed enough to take a life without hesitation. In court, the evidence against Rodas was overwhelming. From the fake drug deal used to lure Wood to his death, to the discovery of the murder weapon, a knife with a dragon's head handle, it was clear that Rodas played a significant role in the crime.
I looked down on the ground and saw a dragon's head, a metal dragon's head on top of the ground.
But when it came time for sentencing, there was no remorse from Rodas. He stood there, emotionless, as he was handed a 55-year sentence. To him, the gang's approval and his newfound status within MS-13 seemed more important than the life he had taken or the decades he would now spend in prison. The most chilling part of Rodas' case is the motivation behind the murder. This wasn't a crime of passion or necessity. It was purely about advancement within a criminal organization. To think that someone would kill just to gain respect and status within a gang is mind-boggling. It's a stark reminder of how distorted values can become when someone is deeply entrenched in gang culture. Case number 7, Tariq Jackson's tearful apology. Tariq Jackson's story is one of youth lost to gang violence, and it's heartbreaking. In 2015, at just 16 years old, Jackson found himself caught in the middle of a gang altercation in Ypsilanti, Michigan. A fight broke out between 2 rival gangs, and in the heat of the moment, Jackson pulled out a gun and opened fire. His bullet struck 20-year-old Keandre Duff in the head, killing him instantly. What makes this case even more tragic is that Jackson, like many others his age, got involved in gang activity without fully understanding the consequences of his actions. By the time he stood trial, Jackson was 18, facing multiple charges, including open murder. He eventually pled guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding a lengthy trial. But during his sentencing, Jackson's tough exterior crumbled. He broke down in front of the court, apologizing to Duff's family and reflecting on how his life had taken a wrong turn.
I just want to say sorry to the family of the victim. I wish the situation would have played out like that. I never thought that my choices and decisions would have affected so many people.
His emotional apology showed a level of regret rarely seen in gang-related cases. What made this moment even more poignant was the reaction from Duff's mother.
Well, he forgives you. And I forgive you. I don't hate you.
In a surprising act of compassion, she forgave Jackson, acknowledging that he was a young man with potential, despite the irreversible harm he had caused. She addressed him as a young man who had dreams and expressed hope that he would find a way to better himself in the future. It was an emotional moment that few could have predicted. Jackson's apology wasn't just words. It was the raw emotion of a young man who had made a terrible mistake and was now facing the harsh reality of his choices. He took full responsibility for his actions, admitting that his involvement in gangs had led him down a dangerous path. His tears weren't just for himself. They were for the life he had taken, the pain he had caused, and the future he had lost. Jackson was sentenced to 17 to 40 years in prison, a heavy price to pay for a split-second decision made in the heat of a gang fight. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.